knowing how to advocate for your clients and knowing how to advocate to the bank and to whoever is handling that is incredibly important. But one of the first things you have to do is identify whether that property is even a candidate for a short sale. So we have two options here. We have our clients or our friends and family, our SOI, people we've run into. You're gonna have a lot of agents, if you were not doing business in 07 through 2012, you don't have the skill set in order to even know that A, that this really is even a thing, and B, to help a client with it, right? But you guys all have me. And that was my specialty from 07 through 2013. That is what I did, nonstop, at a very high volume, with about a 97% approval rate. I did that because I knew how to identify if it would or would not close. I knew how to interview the seller to see if the seller was a good candidate, and I knew what the banks wanted to see. It took me a long time to learn all of that stuff and to perfect it. And now, obviously, those programs haven't been available for a while, so as we're running into this, the banks are gonna have to start getting their stuff together. Back then, I was dealing with the first loan, I was dealing with the second loan. That was a nightmare, because the second loan might have been for $100,000, and they would get a payoff of somewhere between $3,000 to $6,000. And they had to accept that and release the seller of all liability, or the first was not allowed to short sale. It was a very tough time, but we all worked it out. Now, you don't run into that. It's very rare you're gonna run into a first and a second loan. So you guys are at a great advantage. What's going to happen is when you look, so every day I receive the notice of defaults. Who receives those as well? You did. Okay, so I'm gonna show you. And thank you for saying that.
There's like 12.
There is. I'm gonna show you guys how to look at it and how to identify and what's important. For those of you who are not receiving your notice of default emails every day and you want to, please email Caitlin. If you start typing in CAIT in our Outlook mail, she will pop up. Just let her know, please add me to the notice of default list. I have one I've been getting forever. This one's from Chicago Title because I was already on their list from prior, and they got my new email and just started sending them to me. They're the same either way. See, it comes from Caitlin, or they're the same thing. See? When you get these, they can seem a bit overwhelming, right? Because look, you have 12 attachments, right?
I didn't know.
Yes, so I'm gonna show you. All of these Excels, we do have agents who go ahead and just mail merge these or put them into programs. That's why they include the Excel sheets. The Excel sheets are gonna put it into a system to where if people are already marketing, they just plug and play, right? You guys aren't at that point yet, so you're not going to need these Excel sheets. It's good to have them, but you're really not going to need them. Your NOD labels, if you're mailing, your labels will be already in here, you can print if you're not using mail merge. So this would be for like something like with mail merge or a contact management system, something like that. Your NOD labels is just sending them something. So if you had some pre-printed materials you wanted to send them, that's what those labels are for. We don't need any of that today. So the HOA quick look. Now there's a few different things. Does anybody know what NOD means? Thank you, Nancy, for raising that. Yes, notice of default. What does NOS mean? Does anyone know the time frame between an NOD and an NOS? No.
1.5.
No.
30, 35, 40.
Once a notice of default has been filed, now there's no time frame when that gets filed. The banks choose that on their own. Once the notice of default is filed and recorded, the owner has 90 days before a notice of sale will be posted. Now, once a notice of sale is posted, does anyone know what that time frame is that they can go to trustee sale? 21 days. That's it. 3 weeks.
So notice of default, when they have 90 days, and then the notice of sale goes out, and then it's 21 days till the
To the
sale.
sale. Yes. And I have listed short sale properties that had a notice of sale. You can still do it. Those are the ones who need your help the most, because all you have to do is call the bank to postpone the sale. I had one listing where she contacted me, her house was going to sale in a week. I contacted the bank, I got a signed listing agreement immediately, uploaded it to the bank, got the sale postponed, closed her short sale 9 months later. But kept postponing that sale every single month. So just because they're at a notice of sale does not mean you can't help them. You can, as long as the bank's willing to allow you to.
How come I've heard a lot of stories about people that like agents had the houses under contract that was supposed to close on Monday and the bank sold the house on Friday?
Because their agent dropped the ball.
Really?
Yep.
So, the reason you would want to, so how is it, I'm sorry, I'm.
No, that's what this is for. Has anyone in here ever dealt with a short sale?
Just
Personally,
There you go.
and I only know from the.
That's what I mean.
Short
So
sale.
there is no such thing as a silly question in this because none of you guys have ever experienced it.
Okay, so the reason that you would want to, like, how is it helping the client for an agent to grab them and list their home? Are they gonna come out making more money than if they were to let the bank just take it and sell it, like,
They wanna have a foreclosure on it.
what's benefiting them by
Sure,
us
isn't
getting
it?
involved?
So a short sale is a far softer effect on your credit than a foreclosure.
Okay, so if it's being.
And
if it's
in a
going-
foreclosure, they can come after you for that deficiency balance.
Difference, yeah.
And the amount of money is going to be greatly increased. And they will 1099 the client at the end of the year, and we don't have the Mortgage Debt Relief Act anymore. That ended
Okay.
in 2014, I believe.
So by it going to, after those 21 days till sale, by it going to sale, it's going to actually foreclose on them.
And then there's gonna be a ton of extra fees attached after that.
Whereas
If
if
you
the
can
agent
mitigate
sold
it-
go ahead,
If you can mitigate it before that and do the short sale,
yes,
you can negotiate those fees down.
Okay.
And you're not gonna end up with the foreclosure fees and all the other fees attached. Because then what happens is once it forecloses, then the bank has to take over and sell that property. So they're gonna get hit what the bank sells it for, plus all their expenses, which the time frame, if it doesn't, so say it forecloses and it goes back to the bank. Well, did you hear what Mike Oliver said yesterday on TNL? 6 years he's been watching a property. Could you imagine what happens in 6 years? Well, you could hit with that balance once that property sells. So again, you have to, it's always better for the client if they can short sale. Now, if a client contacts you and they're not in default, but they're like, I have to move, you're going to run across that. You are. You're gonna do your net sheet. I'm dealing, with an agent right now. And the agent's like, look, if I have to reduce again, they've gotta bring money to the table. Now, some people are okay with that. Maybe they'll rent it out. But if you have someone who can't do any of those things, you don't wanna say there's nothing we can do for you. That's where this comes into play. And if they haven't missed a mortgage payment, the effect on their credit is gonna be significantly less than if they do miss a mortgage payment. So again, it's just helping them. Sometimes you're able to actually give them a modification. I've had short sales I was working, and I got them a great loan modification. Did I spend a lot of time and not make any money? I did. But can I tell you that that person referred me at least 7 other people? And posted all over Facebook how amazing I was at saving his family home. His son made me this plate. Thank you for saving our home. I mean, trust me, I got chills just talking about it. And this was someone I went to high school with. Again, this is what's important because you might not always get the commission on it, but at the end of the day, when you make them that happy, all of my business was referred. Because once you start doing it, the word gets out, especially when nobody's really talking about it. So to your point, I know we got a little off track, but that was a great question, so thank you. And I have a lot of other paperwork too, that I used to utilize that I can go over with you guys. I really just kind of wanted to help you identify. So when you take your notice of default, I like to do the quick look. So you have 2. Nevada is a priority lien state. Does anyone know what that means?
That the HOA can actually file for default prior to the mortgage company
That's correct.
in the first place.
And when you contact the bank, you have to let them know that. I just wanna let you know, Nevada is a super lien, priority lien state. So most of them know, but if they don't, that was because a lot of times they'll give pushback if they owe HOA. Now, what happens is the banks are supposed to be notified when an HOA goes into default. In my personal experience, if you're not paying your HOA, you're not paying anything else. Because it takes a minute to get it to default. Not always. So I'm gonna show you how to identify an HOA. And then, especially when you get into the notice of sales, that's a whole different thing. So we've got HOA, notice of default labels, HOA quick look. It doesn't look like there's any HOA notice of sales. So let's do the HOA quick look. I'm gonna download it so you guys can see it bigger.
Is it, like, 2 days behind, is that typical, you get it a couple days later?
Yes.
Makes sense.
Because they have to, once it's recorded, it has, obviously they have to pull it from the recorder's office.
Okay.
So I'll zoom in this a little bit for you guys so you can see it since our TV is so much smaller now. So when you're looking at this, so see where it says the price and it says the loan amount? This one right here, Legacy Estates Property Owners Association is the trustee because whoever this person, Harry Johnson, they did a substitution of trustee because they owe on the HOA and did not pay it. Now, that's just the notice of default. Look at that huge difference between the price and the loan amount. They had their notice of default on 1/31/2023. Loan to value right here, 35%. Obviously, they're not a short sale situation, but this might be a really great person to contact and find out what's going on. Now, what I like to do is see, is there something going on? Is there a history, right? So, I have this tab on my computer, it's the Clark County Recorder. I have the recorder and the assessor. So when you go into the Clark County Recorder page, and you click on real property, search records. And it's going to give you name, parcel number, all of that. I search by parcel number.
Isn't there a link to that on the MLS?
There could be. I just have it as a quick link on mine, so I can just easily go to it, but there may very well be. Your parcel number is right here.
Oh, no, actually.
And then I just hit enter. Okay, so now we're gonna go in here, we're gonna see what's going on. So this person has the notice of default. They have the lien. They have Republic Services lien, but they have that release. So you can see what's been going on with this property. It looks like they're always behind. That might have been when they purchased it. So this will show you the recorded date. So it looks like they just purchased it in 2022 and they're already suffering.
Maybe they didn't know about the agreement.
I mean, again, they would have to. I mean, that would be very uncommon if they did not. So what I'd like to do next is I wanna go into the MLS.
This is us being not very bright, but we didn't realize when we moved into our house that the HOA unit wasn't part of our mortgage. It was on our,
Your
Right
agent,
now?
your agent should have told you.
yeah, but maybe we didn't, or maybe we didn't say it. So then we got a notice from HOA and we got paid, but oh, and we can immediately.
Yeah. And that's a good point to make sure, I don't know why it's, but that's a good point to remember that you need to let your clients know how that's gonna work. Your first 2 months of your HOA estate is typically impounded at closing. Not impounded by the lender, but impounded by title at closing, and then typically 2 months later, you owe your first HOA payment.
But they wouldn't send a bill or anything?
Most of them do, but mine didn't, and I have two. I still haven't even gotten my sewer bill or my SID assessment, so I had to go in and pull my own.
And we have 9 rentals and they never.
Yeah, so you just have to sometimes advocate for yourself, cause they don't mind putting a lien at all. So what I'm gonna do now is go into tax records so I can see the history of this property. So I'm gonna do a tax search. And I'm just gonna go ahead and put that parcel number in, cause I already had it pasted. And I've got the result.
I think this is like a computer one, so if you paste it one time, then it'll stay in there.
It's on your
You paste
clipboard
it
for a
again.
minute, yeah. It'll stay on there for a little bit, yeah,
Until like the next meeting.
usually. Or if you log out or whatever the case may be.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, well, good.
You can paste it a whole bunch of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna click on the property ID itself, so we can look at the history.
Everybody applaud Henry Johnson.
Huh?
Can you do that on your phone too, paste
Yes.
a bunch of times?
Yeah.
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
sure-
I always go back and forth.
Alright, we don't have a ton of time because we
Okay, I'm
do have
sorry,
red, so
that's
let's
it.
stay on
No
track,
more
sorry.
questions.
No, you're
No
good.
more questions.
You're good. So this is showing that it was withdrawn in 2018.
Wow. That's a lot of activity.
And it looks like, for whatever the reason, they did some type of transfer. They did a couple transfers, so they purchased it in 2018 for $900,000. In 2022, I don't know what is going on, they're adding people, it looks like these people are all kind of going, see, look, you've got this whole person back and forth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
From
shady
13 to
stuff.
22, it's
Okay, so
changed.
look at this right here, private party lender, seller carryback,
Ooh.
owner, so seller financing. Wow. This person that seller may not even know what's going on. This is why you get a servicer. So again, this is probably a really great opportunity for somebody to intervene and figure that out. Now, unfortunately, you're dealing with a seller carryback and all of that. I don't know that that's something I wanna wait, but really have to get involved in. So I would say unless you're really skilled in all of that, probably this would not be an opportunity for you. But this is the process that I use to kind of help identify, because I wouldn't have known that looking in the recorder, because it didn't give me that information. Our MLS, our tax records give us a lot of information, so always use 2 sources. Do you guys have any questions about that
You
process right
went
there?
from the email to the county recorder, got the parcel number, and then put it into here to gather
And you can do it reverse too.
more
You
information.
can, if you get the email, I always have it all up. So you can go to tax records first, and then go to the recorder too. Either way, you're gonna get your information. Your process is up to you.
05 to 12, what else they had? 905. No.
Yeah. Yeah, but they did a first and a second. So, yeah, they had pulled out some type of a private party loan in that's why it says private individual. And then they had a refinance, so their loan amount, they don't owe that much, if we remember from that initial, they paid a lot for it, but they put a large chunk down. I don't know that this is something worth messing with, and that's why it's good to do the research. I mean, honestly, we could have done this research super fast. I just went, once you know the process. So you could have had that done, I could have looked at that all and known in about 2 minutes that I was gonna move on. So if we wanna go, that was for an HOA one. Now, the real ones you should focus on are the notice of defaults and the notice of sales. I'm just moving fast because I know we only have about a little over 30 minutes. So let's go to the notice of default, quick look. In your notice of defaults, we have 3 pages, guys, and this is just for one day. I mean, we're getting these on a very regular basis. So this is a very missed opportunity if you're not focusing on it.
Can you tell us what some of those, what they mean?
Absolutely. So for this one right here, when you're looking at it, this is gonna tell you who the trustee is. So Western Progressive Nevada, I don't know what that is, so we're definitely going to want to look into,
Sorry, when you say who the trustee is, does that mean the lender?
what happens, thank you, great question. When you have a notice of default, prior to your notice of default, the lender will do what's called a substitution of trustee. The substitution of trustee does not transfer title, but it transfers who has authority on that loan. So, the seller still has to be incredibly involved, but, and you'll see, if you ever saw a statement that comes from the bank, they charge for all of this stuff. So someone can eat up $60,000-$70,000 in equity that they could have had just by being in default, because they charge so many fees. So when it does a substitution of trustee, that's basically your indication it's going to go to a notice of default.
You said it transfers who's in charge of the loan? Or
Who's-
who's in,
Kinda like how we are a trustee, we're a trustee state, right? Do we have trustees, or is that other states? Am I getting everything confused right now?
It's not like you're thinking a trustee like a,
More like a,
yeah, so basically, what it's saying is, this person, what the bank has done is they have now enlisted their trustee to
be in charge.
manage the decisions of that loan. The bank still ultimately has a decision, and so does the seller. It's hard to explain, and I'm probably doing a bad job of it, and I apologize. I'll Google the actual term of it. I didn't think about doing that ahead of time. It's been a minute. But it's just an indicator that they're going into foreclosure, basically. So once they're in default, even if they don't have a notice of default assigned yet, you'll see a substitution of trustee. You know that it's imminent.
It's coming, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Did you have a question, Vanessa? Or-
Oh, no, it's just not.
Hi, sorry. Okay, so this is saying who that is. I'm thinking Western Progressive Nevada is probably a bank, but I don't know. I'll know more when I go into public records.
There's a place called All Western Mortgage. That I've used.
Yeah, I think that they're a broker though. I don't know if they fund their own.
Gotcha.
So-
EOB, is there anything we should do?
EEV, this is giving their estimate of value. So they're basically saying that this is their estimate of value. I don't know if that's correct, but their EMV, so they've got an EMV and an EEV. The EEV, I think, is their estimated equity value. EMV is their estimated mortgage value, estimated equity value. No, that doesn't make sense.
Loan value, ELD.
Cause the loan value, it says, the loan value is $499,950, but then it's saying it's got a 15% loan to value. I don't really look at this stuff a lot because I don't know how accurate it is, and I honestly don't understand all this terminology. This would be a great question, to have title answer. I know I've had an answer before, I just don't remember.
Well, ELV and EEV equal EMV. That makes sense.
The loan value plus the equity value equal the estimated value. Okay, that makes sense. So this one, they have a ton of equity.
Yeah, 1.6 million.
There's no reason they should be in default, which leads me to believe maybe there was a death, maybe something happened, we don't know.
Right.
But this would be a good one to go after once we look at everything else, because it looks like he has a ton of equity. Something may just be going on, we don't know what that is, right?
Sure.
But his loan value is very low. Now, what I would like to do is I'd like to copy this and put this into the MLS to see if I find something different. So we're gonna go right back into that tax search. We're gonna put it into the APN, which is your parcel number. It's not listed. He has owned this property since 2004.
Okay, the sale price is $265, that's the price was on the other one then.
Yes.
This is the original price.
And he refied it in '06 with Countrywide. It looks like he did a first and a second. So he did a $450 first, $150,000 second, that was very common back then. '06, fun times. So when you see this like this, that's just when that recorded, or maybe he took out an equity line after.
This term is
That's, again, I mean, I don't pay a ton of information about stuff. I just like to kind of see, because you go down a rabbit hole.
We don't know what we're doing, yeah.
Yeah, I just like to look at what was the mortgage history, what's going on, what was the last recording of that property. I try to keep it as simple as possible, otherwise I'm gonna confuse you guys like crazy. I'm trying not to do that, because this is a lot of information just in general. I could teach this 5 times and you would still, you know, have questions, because it is a lot of information. Yeah. They had a lis pendens. I'm not sure what that lis pendens was for. Lis pendens is typically when something happens, maybe you had a judgment against, well, no, judgment would be different, but a lis pendens is typically when there's another party involved. I know that there was a realtor, I'm not gonna mention his name, back during the boom, who would slap lis pendens on the properties to sell. So, like, to say he would basically,
Said that before.
Yes.
They wrote it into their contracts, right? They
Yep.
could put a list pendants.
Yep.
So that they have to sell with him in the future.
yes, and then he'd slap that on them, and then we had to fight to get that taken off.
Oh, we talked about that at a sales meeting, did we not?
We did. And so, a lis pendens, again, this is on there, we don't know what it's for. There was a notice of trustee sale in 2016. There was a notice of default. There was a release of lis pendens back then, so there was another one. So this property's been going through it. There was an HOA lien, but whatever's been happening, they've continued to keep curing that default. What that tells me is I need to do more information on where? Do more research. Yep. So what we wanna do is go back into our search, and we will put this new parcel number in there. And just, so see how easy it is when you have them all right there to toggle back and forth between? So that's why I like to keep them open. Default and election to sell. So Western Progressive Nevada is who filed the notice of default. See this? This is substitution of trustee. So it was what was that, Household Bank, I think? Household Bank did a substitution of trustee to Western Progressive Mortgage. That was probably the mortgage insurer, either the mortgage insurer or whoever handles their defaults.
I Googled it and it says that they're just like a trustee company, like
Yeah.
they just.
So they just handle the defaults. So again, we're able to see that there's been quite a bit of stuff going on, and this obviously happened in conjunction with that notice of default. Sometimes it happens first, sometimes it happens concurrently. That's really up to whoever's doing the filings. But again, we're looking at, unless we see something else going on, they've got a lien they've got several liens from our public services, look at all those. They've got an HOA lien, they've got another HOA lien, they have another Republic Services lien, Republic Services put the lis pendens on.
What is that?
Lis pendens, it prevents you from selling until it's,
It's paid off.
That means pending litigation, right?
yes. Thank you. Again, this person, they've got some stuff. Look at this one, they've got a judgment from Construction Services Unlimited. They've got another one, a judgment.
I don't know
They've
if
got
this is-
another lien.
I don't know if this is a factor, but he runs his company out of his house, his company's address is his house. He's a water waste treatment person, he's the president of the company.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the people work for the company, and then because his company's being run out of his house, that.
I think you guys are doing way too much research. That doesn't need to be done right now.
Okay, fair enough.
Google's good.
Yeah.
Too much.
Google is great,
Okay.
and all of that can be done at a later date, but for right now, we're just identifying, is this the one we wanna prospect, right? Now, we've seen, he's got a lot of equity. He can pay this stuff, he's just choosing not to. This is probably a good one to go after and find out what's going on.
How do you handle that conversation
So-
with friction?
People who are in default typically will avoid everyone. They will avoid every phone call, they will avoid mail, and they will avoid answering their front door. What they cannot avoid is if you put something on their door or leave them a, hey, we're here to help, if, the research that Steve just did shows us that he's an educated guy, right? He knows his stuff. I don't need to tell him he has equity.
He
So
knows
this is
exactly what's
somebody,
happening.
this is somebody you wanna be very direct with. Stop paying the bank your equity. let's get your home sold. Right? You could be direct with a person like that. Stop giving the bank your equity. Contact me to schedule an appointment to discuss your options, right? He has plenty of equity to pay off all that stuff. Why he's not, I have no idea. But with someone like that, you wanna be direct. Now, Steve did that research, that was great. I'm not saying don't do that, because you should. We have so many resources I didn't have back then. Google and social media, were they available back then? Yes, but it's like on steroids now. So you guys have so many resources to be able to identify these properties. This is a property that you don't even have to short sale. You'll be able to do a traditional sale, and there's going to be a lot of them. But you will see on our notice of defaults that you will have people that means that it's owned free and clear. Now, we won't know that until we actually go into tax records. But again, that's where you wanna go. I'm trying to find one that shows, so this one right here. This looks like it's actually the HOA. So I'm not sure.
Street landscape, that'd be-
Yeah, that looks like it's something from the HOA, and so is that one right there. And some of these will, I'm just trying to find one that's got 11 million. Trump, yeah, Trump International, appointment of substitute. Again, so while you're looking through these, look at this one, this is a great one. Alright, so this person, right here, I bet you if we pull them up, they probably purchased in the more recent, but I could be wrong. So this one is showing price, it's showing the estimated value at 326, and the loan amount of, look at that, it's negative, so you see it right there. This would be somebody, if they had to sell, not only would they have to come in with the $10,000, they'd have to come in with all of the arrears, all of the additional fees paid, plus all of the closing costs affiliated with selling this property. That 10,000 is gonna turn into probably somewhere around 60, if not a little bit more. Yeah. Which is still not that bad for short sale. Remember, I was talking, they were forgiving sometimes $600,000-$700,000. But the majority of them were at least 100 to 200. Yeah, exactly. We're not in that situation now, thankfully. So these are going to be easier to maneuver. You're not gonna be dealing with these huge losses. What we're gonna be dealing with is nobody's expecting it. Hopefully they are, but it wasn't anticipated because things shifted so fast.
So is there a script, or what is that phone call look like?
Well, they're not gonna answer your call.
No.
That's why, I leave something on your fridge.
Leave someone
How
on
can I
the front door?
help you?
Yeah, but.
Yeah, I mean, in an instance where you know that they don't have equity, right? This one, we wouldn't be able to say, stop giving your bank all your equity. In this instance, you would wanna say, contact me so we can explore your options. Leave a package at their front door. I can help you guys put one together. I've got a ton of short sale, like a whole short sale package that says, foreclosure versus short sale, don't lose your home, what are your options, things like that. Contact me for a consultation.
So what happens with commission in these?
It all gets wrapped into, typically the bank, they started only paying 5%, and then they modified it to 6 later. So they started at 5%, 2.5%, and 2.5%. And then they ended up doing HAFA, and everybody else followed suit, and HAFA was the Home Affordable Foreclosure Alternatives Program that the government put into place. And with that, the seller got cash to relocate, they got $3,000, they paid a full 6% commission, and they allowed a $6,000 maximum payout to the second, because so many people had first and second. That has since passed, but I'm assuming they will still probably mirror that program without the second portion.
Because
And they allowed a certain amount towards liens, different things like that, but with us being a priority lien state, I was always able to get those paid because I had to remind them, look, they have the right to foreclose, you're gonna pay it anyways, let's go ahead and just get this done now.
So the
and I was
bank
able to get it
essentially
done.
becomes the seller, right?
What's that?
Is the bank essentially becoming the
No,
seller?
the seller
It's
still
still
has
the
all
client?
authority of their property. So everything is done with the seller and then the bank's approval. So the bank won't even talk to you without a letter of authorization from the seller because it is the seller's property still. Even though it went to a substitution of trustee, that's only on behalf of the bank to file the default paperwork and handle the foreclosure process. The banks don't handle the foreclosure process. That's why we do the substitution of trustee. Now, the seller still has to sign the listing agreement. They still have to agree to all terms, and they have to cooperate throughout the entire process with a ton of documents.
Over and over and over again.
Well, if you do your job right, I just made them send me everything each month, and I handled that part, so that the seller wasn't frustrated, and I think they appreciated that.
Which day on date? January 22.
Here we go. So this is someone who bought in January of last year. This is exactly what we've been talking about, guys. You're going to run into this. This person needs help. They have an FHA loan on this property, which means it's an FHA short sale. FHA has its own process. Now, they do require some type of hardship. Like, what is the reasoning? What's going on? We don't know what that is, but again, that's why you do the seller interview. I can't go into that today because when I taught my short sale series, it was for 4 weeks, once a week for 4 weeks, 3 hours a day. So that's 12 hours of training to do my short sale series. And I still didn't touch on everything. There's so much to know. So I'm just trying to give you guys the basics right now so that you know how to identify it. This is somebody ripe for the picking right here, right now. I would knock on their door every single freaking day, all different times of the day. What can I do to help you? Right? What can I do to help you? We can contact the bank. FHA short sales will give $1,000 to the seller. It's not that much, but it is what it is. We can always try to negotiate more. FHA is pretty structured in theirs, so they'll probably only give the $1,000, but they do give a full satisfaction. Meaning they're not gonna go after that seller because it's a government program. So they're not gonna go after that seller for the deficiency. And that's part of their short sale program. So again, FHA, great short sale to deal with because their process is their process. And as long as you follow it, you'll typically have it handled within 90 days. You should have your full approval and they give you an approved price, which is even better. So this person is ready to go. And if you looked at your notice of defaults every single day and you just identified one right property each day, how much business would that be for you? Right?
Do you think the foreclosure process is still gonna take 8-9 months?
Are you talking about the short sale or the foreclosure?
I mean, the short sale.
So the short sale process, on an FHA, they actually have to follow government guidelines. So they're supposed to issue, and I have it in my FHA short sale, I forget what it's called. It's the, I forget what they call their, I think it's their certificate of value or something like that, which they have to give to you. So what that is it's a letter, and I have all of this in my paperwork to show, but I just wasn't training that far in advance right now because we don't have the time. But what they do is they issue it to you, and it's a letter from FHA, and it states, this is what the sales price needs to be, here's the approved commissions, here's the approved settlement costs, here's the approved, if there's any deficiencies, anything like that, here is the amount left over for the seller. If you sell it within this time frame, the seller gets this much. If you sell it after this time frame, the seller gets this much. If there's outstanding liens, the money they get goes towards paying those liens and they don't get that money. So that's what their pre-approval looks like. You still have to get your final approval, but they will give you that pre-approval and then you can typically get that final approval within the next 30 days. Sometimes sooner, it just really depends. But I would say factor in, without marketing time frame, once you have an accepted offer on a property, unless they let you start beforehand, which sometimes they will, I would factor in somewhere between 90 to 120 days. By the time, because right now, they're not prepared. They don't have loss mitigation departments anymore. They had to develop all of this back.
That's why it took so long.
That's why it took so long. But thankfully, I'm sure they could go back into their processes and be able to pull that information and make it relevant to today. Because all of the assembly bills that came out regarding foreclosures and notice of defaults and short sales, all of that occurred way back when, but it's still in place.
Okay, so I don't see why there would be, or yes, there's always life cases that happen, death or medical emergency, I don't know, but when in 2022, the first part of it, they did have really low interest rates. So that just then, like, coming on hardship times, it's not that we were just, it's really low interest.
Yeah, it doesn't say their interest rate. But yeah, no, that's a great point. Again, main hardships, divorce, death, losing a job, relocation.
So it's all the standard things, so that's not 2008 when all of a sudden your mortgage payment
Yeah.
ballooned, it's just.
Something happened to this
hardship.
person. They bought a house a year ago, and have they lost value? Sure, but nothing crazy, right? Maybe eight to 10%, somewhere around there. Maybe 10%. But again, something happened in this person's life. We don't know what that is, but we have to find it out. What is their hardship? They have one, or they wouldn't be in default, like you said. And one of the hardest things to do right now is, I'll just stay here till it forecloses, because then where do I go? Right? If you can't afford this mortgage payment, you can't afford your rent. Unfortunately, the biggest problem that you're facing with this, once you go into default, you can't get out of it unless you cure the default. So someone like this, who probably doesn't have the money to cure that default, they cannot rent out their home anymore. They've lost that option. So they can either stay in it until it forecloses.
Why can't they rent out their home? If there's like a law.
Well, no, they're in default. It's going to foreclose unless they can cure that default. So say the bank says, okay, to cure your default, it's $35,000. They can cut a check for $35,000 and then they're good, back on track. But they probably don't have that money. So again, this is something where you've got to keep going there. I remember when I was doing short sales, the banks knew I was doing them, so they'd reach out to me when people went into default. They'd reach out to me personally and tell me to start knocking on their doors. And I'd have to go. I would go probably 3 times a week and knock on their door until I got someone there.
How angry are people?
It was just, and really, it was, I mean, it's always dangerous out there, right? I wasn't worried. And I looked a lot different back then too. I probably had a lot more to worry about back then. Not so much right now, but, you know, it was more so just to let them know, look, the bank just wants to work with you. They do. The banks don't want a foreclosure. So the banks were like, look, see if you can get them to respond to us, get that property listed, let's do the short sale. They got to that point. So you just have to be persistent with that and just let them know, look, I'm here to help you. Drop off documents. Let them know. Don't let your home go to foreclosure. Let me help you. Let me see if I can get you some financial assistance. There's a lot of things out there. They can go down to Department of whatever that is, Human Services or whatever that is, and they can get assistance. There's a lot of different assistance programs out there. They just have to advocate for themselves and go find it. But again, it's always better for them to do this than to foreclose, because then they don't know. Their time is ticking. Right now, this was on the 31st. So we're 2 days in to a 21-day period. They've got 19 days, we're 2 days into a 90-day period, right? It might seem like a lot, but it's not. And then once it goes to notice of sale, so I'm gonna show you what a notice of sale looks like really quick. And I know you guys are gonna have a lot of questions. I'm really just trying to help you identify, and this is a ton of information, a ton. So I don't expect you to retain even a portion of that, just a small portion. But if someone's talking to you about it, I want you to have the confidence to say, you know what? Thankfully, I've affiliated myself with the brokerage, and my branch manager, this is all she used to do. I don't know how to answer this question for you, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go to her, and maybe we'll do a meeting together to see what we can do to solve, to get you moving on to your next chapter. Because ultimately, that's what we wanna do, whatever that looks like for them. Notice of sale. So this means, look at this one. They're upside down. National Default Servicing. This is right in Silverstone. Whoever wants to go hunt them down, right up the street, they're right there. They don't have the money. It says that they're upside down by about 12,644. They probably don't have the money to cure that, and in 19 days, they're gonna be homeless, unless you help them, right? 19 days, this is a notice of sale. It's 21 days, that's it. Done. 19 more days, these people are homeless. Probably need a little bit of help, right? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Now, again, before I ever take on a challenge like that, I like to see how many liens they have against themselves. I showed you guys how to do that on the assessor's page, or I'm sorry, on the recorder's page. That is important as well, because you do have to get the bank to approve those. Because those have to get paid. They cannot sell a property. They can't transfer title of a property with liens. So that is why I always like to check that. HOA, Republic Services, the banks will pay all of that. But what do you think one of the biggest hiccups we may run into right now is? Nope. SIDS and lids, thank you, that's a tax, that's also a priority.
Wait, doesn't that, you can transfer a property that still has SIDS on it, so.
It can, as long as it's not default.
Okay.
The default still has to be cured, yeah. But great question. What do you think is a challenge in this market that I never had to deal with? Can anyone think of that? Solar. I wish oh, we do have that recorded. I was like, oh, that was priceless. Thank you guys. That, even Alan's laughing over there. He's turning red. Solar. I talked to Mike about this, and I'm hoping he'll touch on it in his class. I said, Mike, hey, I love to think ahead, and I have a feeling we're gonna be running into a lot of situations with people who have solar and they get foreclosed on or they're a default. What happens if they have to short sell, and what happens if it becomes an REO? How does all of that work? And he's like, I have absolutely no idea. But thank you for bringing this to my attention, because I don't think anyone knows.
We sell properties where we say that the new owner will take over the lease,
Mhm.
so.
What if they're not paying their lease? Right? What if they're not paying it?
I guess I'm just thinking, like, how long they're not paying, right? If
You
it's like,
can't
well,
transfer it if it's a default.
Got it.
How does that work? Who bears that burden? It is, but again, you're dealing with what's the solar company's take on it? The process between when they stop paying and when something goes into actual default and then foreclosure and then gets released back to the market, if they don't do a short sale, you're looking somewhere around a year and a half. That's a long time. Again, I do have Mike looking into that for you guys, because that's something I thought of and I was like, okay, this is real. Like, this is something we're going to have to address. So again, hopefully he will address that if he has that, he'll be able to address that for you guys, but that's something just to keep top of mind if they do have solar. The one thing I do, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Brent, one thing I always did is I made sure that they pulled a prelim on my properties prior to me listing. Does anyone know why I would wanna do a prelim versus a title search?
Just want to know well, I did that on one of our properties, but you can get that from title, but you wanna know what's going on.
You know, they normally just give you like a property profile, right?
Yeah.
The difference between a property profile and a prelim is a prelim will pull the person and the property. So if they have any other outstanding liens, I had one, they had a huge tax lien. You have to do a set aside, and they will, but it takes about 60 days with the IRS, sometimes 90. They'll do a set aside, they'll release that lien to allow the short sale, and then they'll put it right back on the person. But again, you have to do your research and know what to do. I can go into all of that later, because I don't wanna run into Brent's time. Any other questions really quick before we turn it over?
Can you do a 12-part series?
Yeah. I mean, is that something you guys would really, I mean, it's a lot of information. I mean, I can break it down. It could take a lot more.
Before actually at our fire brokerage, and I'm still like, yes, let's do it again.
I did,
Like,
I
yep,
did,
yep.
I did how many, I mean, I did
I
that
don't remember
for
how long it
8
was, but it
weeks,
was
I
a long
think.
while,
I
yeah.
think I did 8 weeks
And I
worth.
sat through that whole thing.
You did.
And I was like, let's do it again. Still,
Okay.
yeah.
I can, I mean, I have all the stuff. So I don't mind putting something like that together at all, if that's something you feel like would be beneficial to all of you.
I think it makes us uneducated,
Okay.
at least when we're talking.
I'm all for it.
I wanna be able to talk about it.
Yeah, cause this is going to be our reality. It's not gonna be our reality like it was before, but it will be.
So you go to these people's house, you got 19 days, like, what can I do to help you? And then you're like, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Well, then you just
Come
come
back
back to
to
me and I'm gonna help you guys.
Right back here. You
Just
run
come back to me and I'll help.
Yeah.
A lot of practice.
Yeah.